everyone. Welcome to the Healing Train. I am your conductor, otherwise your coach, Bevon Squires, and today we are sponsored by Spirit Source Connection. But I tell you what, at Spirit Source Connection, we believe that we are multi-dimensional spiritual beings and that we have supernatural power that we enact through our imagination, our visualization, creativity, anything that allows us to connect to our spirit and the universe. Okay. And so, but today we are here because we're on the healing train. The healing train is where ordinary people come to talk about their extraordinary stories so that people who are on their journey can see what is possible. That's what we do here. And today, our passenger, Mr. Rob Arana, is going to come on and share his experience with us with his healing process. But first, before we get into all of that, let's just go ahead and say hi to Rob and allow him to introduce himself to us. Hello, Rob. Can you please come on and say hello to the people?
Hello, everybody. I'm Robert Arana. I am an intuitive energy healer, and my business is Healing Heart Energy Therapy. And I'm also a co-owner of One Community Now, which is a holistic center in Roanoke, Virginia.
Wow, how exciting. Rob has gone through all sorts of trauma in his life, and now he has triumphed. He has been through the struggles in life. Now he is experiencing some success. Now, we all know trauma looks different for each of us. The process is not going to be a cookie cutter type process. But what you will be able to see here and what you will be able to understand is that Rob went through something. Rob healed through something, and now Rob is living a life that he has always dreamed of. And now he knows and I knows that through all the ups and downs, twists and turns, ins and outs, we can heal from trauma. And so, as you know, I wrote a book. It's called The Energy Harvest, a spiritual model for the enhancement of your life. This is a 4-phased. I always try to show it to you. Oh, goodness, it looks like showing. This is the first time I've actually been able to get it to show in all of the episodes. So I'm very excited about that. But the book itself is a workbook, and it's a 4-phase workbook that talks about identifying trauma. Then it goes on to talk about processes like therapy, other processes, maybe like a 12-step modality, something that has been able to come in and change the way we thought of ourselves and set us up for healing. Then we go to the achieve phase, where now that we have gone through identifying our trauma, looking at what caused it, operating in some new energies, some new ideas. Now we get to achieve success and healing. And then we're going to move into the sustain phase. How in the world do you keep all of this going on? How do you keep positive, even though sometimes that trauma tries to sneak back up and tell you that you are not the person that you know you are? Well, I tell you what, guys, we're going to talk about all of that today, right here on the Healing Train. And Rob, now I know how important it is to identify trauma. I understand that before we can identify a solution, we have to first identify the problem, right? And so now in your life, can you please explain to us how you were able to identify the spiritual injury or the trauma that had happened in your life? First of all, do you believe you've had a spiritual injury? And if so, then tell us about that, please.
Well, the way that I began identifying where the trauma was in my life and understanding what caused it was the first thing I did was I sat back and I looked at all the relationships I've had in my life. And I'm talking, you know, personal relationships, you know, with whether it was with my ex-wife or any other partners that I've had since then. And, you know, when I look back at that and I realized they all failed in some way. And I wanted to, and that started that thing, and it was, and it still is ongoing. It's the work never ends as far as I'm concerned, but a lot of it has gotten behind me. And I started to identify, well, why do these things keep happening over and over and over? It's very easy for some of us at times to blame the other person and say, oh, they did that to me, or she did that to me, or he did that to me. Um, and there may be some of that. I'm not going to say that there's not, but when you start your healing process, you have to look at it from your individual point of view and say, I did this and I did that, or I allowed this to happen to me. That's responsibility. So that started me on my healing process with identifying what what were the issues I had in all those relationships. And it took a lot of time, and it takes a lot of frankly, it takes a lot of guts to sit down with yourself and say, hey, listen, during this process with this person, you were an asshole. Yeah, yeah, I was. So and being very frank with yourself and not sugarcoating it in any way, and just accepting that I did this, I did that, I allowed this to happen. And from there, it was going through each of individual relationships. Just as a little background, my I'm a scientist and I deal in process improvement. So me, like, writing everything down and then finding the commonalities in every one of my processes where I found that things went wrong was like, that's when you establish that, oh, here are the key points. Now, if this went wrong in every relationship, why did each one of these go wrong? What was the contributing factor to each one of these? And then you're going to find those commonalities as to what caused this. And you'll start with very surface commonalities that, because I did this or I did that. And then once you establish your first set, or your first cut, then that's going to lead you into the direction as to why did this happen. Okay. And then you start really drilling down, and you keep talking about the traumas that we carry with us. Where did these traumas occur? Did they occur to me? Were they just part of my cultural upbringing? Were these part of my childhood, that they started? And I found some of that they started very early in my life, and how I was treated by my family, and how I was treated by others. And I don't want to give the impression that my family's a horrible family. That they're not. They did the best that they could at the time with the information that they have. And I was raised pretty much the way they were raised. Okay. So, but that still left trauma that I carried through all my relationships. Okay. And some of the conclusions for me were, as part of that, what I'm going to continue to now talk about is shadow work, is that why did these things keep happening and coming up, and realizing that, you know, some of these things were things that, were told to me as I was a child, um, you're overweight, so you need to lose weight. So I was given a very poor body image of myself. And I know that men don't talk about things like their body image. In the media, that's really regulated to the female at this point. But no, men deal with that too. Okay. And ladies, understand that your man is going through that, even if he's not talking about that. Okay. So those things, those traumas started very early in my life. Okay. And those just carried through, and they were compounded with how I was treated by others because of it, and how they viewed me. And then it caused me to put coping mechanisms in place. And my coping mechanisms, were things like being an overachiever in every other aspect of my life, which in itself can be traumatic, because it caused me stress and anxiety in all my jobs, because I had to be the outperformer. I had to show that there was a different side of me that you should value. Okay. And that keyword, that you should value. So I put my value of my personal self in somebody else's hands, where my value should really be coming from me. And being on the other side of the fence now, I realize that I'm the only one who needs to value myself. That what others think should not be part of my lexicon anymore. It should be, you know, you can think whatever you want of me. You're a free, sovereign being. I don't have to acknowledge that you think that way of me. Is it nice to have people around us who recognize us for what we are? Absolutely. It brings joy to be recognized. But that's a little egoic, isn't it? So, you know, I had to then understand my part and my ego with perpetuating all those traumas that I had since childhood that I brought forward with me into every single one of my relationships, and how it shaped who I was at that point, then how I acted towards my partner, that then made how my partner then interacted with me. So understanding what I'm going to call the root cause of every single one of those traumas, and I'm not done yet. So something always comes up, and you're like, I missed something there. Now I got to go back and do a little bit more work. But that's part of who we are, and that's why we're here. And being able to then identify what those were, and then how do we clear them out? Because we can't go back and change the past. Okay, we can talk about, you know, quantum mechanics all you want on another call, and the timelines happen simultaneously. We can talk. That's a different whole story at this point. But how did I clear some of that out, and how did I deal with that? So I've done a lot of work with plant-based medicines, okay, that allowed me to get beyond my ego, get beyond the self, and really talk to spirit, or my spirit guides, really, as part of this. And they were an integral part of me working this out. So some of that, it was allowed me once again to just become more open with myself. Like I talked about earlier, when you have to sit down, you have to admit, I did this, I did that. I caused some of my own miseries based on the past trauma that then led to what was the root cause of that trauma? What started this? And then you have to develop a plan in some way to say, well, how do I get rid of this? How do I deal with this on a day-to-day basis? Because even though it might not be something big that comes up on a day-to-day basis, but these traumas will affect every aspect of your life. How you see somebody else, how you perceive yourself, how you interact with other people, how you interact with yourself. It's all going to so being able to get to that other side and say, now what do I need to put in place to, for lack of a better word, correct this going forward? And you know, some of those things for me was I had no self-love for myself. I could love another person, or I felt that I could love another person, but that was very superficial, because if you don't love yourself first, how can you truly, really love somebody else? So I'm not saying that I'm perfect in any way. Do I still struggle? Do I still struggle with self-love? Yep, every single day. Okay. But so it's a conscious effort to step back and say, you know, you're criticizing yourself again, or you're looking at yourself in a not so good light, not a negative light, but you're not putting your own self on your own pedestal and saying, hey, you really need to be up here because you're great. Okay. So it does take that work, and at times does it get icky? Without a doubt, man. Shadow work is messy, it is ugly, and it is not kind to yourself. But however, I will tell you right now that that pain that I went through to recognize and do all that shadow work was 100% worth it when I got to the other side and look back. While you're in the thick of it, you know, you feel despair, you feel sadness, you feel that nothing's ever going to change. I can't achieve this. It's that those negative thought forms come in, and you're like, I'm ready to just throw in the towel. If you don't throw in the towel and you continue to put in the work, this is going to pay dividends at the back end. It's going to pay dividends in every aspect of your life, whether it's your professional life, your personal life, any interactions that you have with people, whether it's a business that you own. You're going to see your mindset change. And what has been one of the best litmus test for me is being able to be triggered again, have that trauma come up, and then stepping back after the fact and go, you handled that a lot different than you would have 5 years ago. Because 5 years you would have done A, B, and C, which would have put you back into the same cycle that you've been doing all your life. But you chose this time to do D, E, and F, and therefore there was a different outcome this time. And it's okay then to pat yourself on the back and say, the work I did has paid off. So,
Wow, Rob, that is so amazing. Thank you so much for that in-depth explanation of how you were able to identify issues in your life, not just the trauma, but how that trauma from early childhood carried with you up into all of your relationships in your adulthood. Rob, you really, really have explained from a personal male perspective how body image is important for men. And like you said, that's not something that men talk about. Thank you so much for your transparency. Thank you so much for the courage to come on here and just bare your soul, because that's what you just did. You talked about the shadow work and how you were not the best person that you wanted to be because of those shadows, and how difficult it was to walk through them and identify every little thing that you did to destroy your relationships. It takes a lot of courage to be able to sit with yourself long enough to identify these things. And for me, I was able to identify them because of the feelings that I was having: the guilt, the shame, the self
yes.
doubt, the disappointment, the anger, the rejection. All of these feelings came as a result of the trauma or the spiritual injuries, if you will, that we face in life. And so if you ever have felt these feelings, chances are they are tied to some type of trauma that has happened in your life. And what I like to do is think about the first time I felt these feelings, and then when was the last time, the most current time that I felt these feelings, to see if there's any connection. What is my expectation in each of these situations? Is it my expectation that's causing me to have these traumatic experiences? But I am so grateful that as of today, these days, and like you said, the work is never done. And I'm so happy to hear that you are a systems thinker. I am also a systems thinker. I have a green belt in Lean Six Sigma. And there are so many people out there that don't have that critical mindset. They're not able to connect the dots from their thoughts to their feelings, to their behavior, to their patterns. And so it's people like us. We have been given this gift of thinking in this way and understanding in a certain way so that we can reach back and help others. And that's exactly what we're doing today. Thank you so much. Now, as I said, the energy harvest is a 4-phase trauma healing process. And so we've just uncovered the identify phase. We did some really great work here identifying this. And now we're going to move into the set phase. The set phase is where we take a look at the mindset. What have I told myself? You talked about coping skills in the last segment. What have I told myself about myself? What do I need to unlearn, right? So that I can relearn some healthy ideas, some healthy behaviors, some healthy coping skills. Because if we don't have those healthy coping skills, we may turn to food, we may turn to gambling, we may turn to sex, drugs, alcohol. We may turn to all of those mechanisms just to escape those painful feelings. And so I want to know, how were you able to get past those painful feelings? What mechanism or healing process did you use to help you through that?
Well, I was very much in a mindset of like 100% logic. Like, feelings did not come into the equation very often. Like most men, I was a problem solver. So my partner came to me with something, I saw a problem to solve instead of just being an empathetic ear. and just letting my partner vent with me. I was always ready to solve the problem, and then it led to frustration with like, oh, you asked me, but you're not trying to solve your problem. It just, so that resentment comes in when you deal with that. So how did I get past that? Well, it was definitely getting in touch with myself as a human being and realizing that my emotions really should not be bottled up, because you bottle up your emotions, it causes dis-ease within your body. You start to have all sorts of different problems. I had back issues, frequently sick, things like that. And once you're able then to get to a space where you can freely express your emotions, keep them from being bottled up, and learn in a very effective way to do good communication, like with anybody, whether, once again, whether it's a business partner or it's an intimate partner, whatever, it then changed the entire way that I would approach anybody. And that's being that mindful set that anytime that something comes out of my mouth, is it going to be helpful and not hurtful to somebody? And then also, do I want this said to me? And I have to be then empathetic for somebody else. And part of this all led to a lot of my spiritual awakening and the development of my gifts. We all have gifts, and we're all born with them. We're taught to ignore them as children. Well, no, you don't speak to anybody yet. That's an imaginary friend. Well, no, I can hear somebody. You just think it's imaginary because you're closed off. And we teach children that. Okay, no, you don't do it. So, but that's a whole nother topic we can go down about teaching intuitive children. But it's, I was able to start getting in touch with that, and then starting to allow myself to deal in a different realm, not just in the world of logic and facts, but with things that the normal person that I would deal with in my work life. And like you're a green belt, I'm a Six Sigma black belt. So once again, process, logic, the whole nine yards. But how do I bring that through, and how do I develop that I am an emotional being, and then I have these things and they're going to come up, and how do I handle them, in the moment? Because once again, as a man, I was taught that you're supposed to be stoic. You're the rock. You don't show emotions. Emotions is vulnerability. People will use it against you as a weapon. And at times, yes, people will do it. Okay. But if you're secure in your position, they can use any weapon against you that they want. And you're going to be like, yeah, I know that. I know that I'm slightly broken. Yeah, I've done that. I'm good. So that you're not telling me anything, and you're not voicing this to the world that I already haven't voiced it to it already. So you're not revealing any secrets. So you take power away from people to hurt you in those kind of ways. So really identifying it, was able to bring me to that other side.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much for that. What I have found in my mindset and being available to move forward in my healing, I had to look at forgiveness. I had to see forgiveness for the tool and the key that it is for unlocking this potential, unlocking a new way of thinking, unlocking a new way of being. And then I had to give myself permission, right, to engage in this new way. I had to find my worthiness to be worthy of a new way to live, a new way to respond, new relationships. I had to take a look at all of that. And so in forgiveness, I, number one, had to forgive me, right? Because I blamed myself for not being prepared for the trauma. I blamed myself for some of the trauma patterns that I adopted as coping mechanisms. And then the ultimate was to be able to forgive the person that I blamed for harming me. Because until I'm able to forgive, blame sets the stage for where I'm going. And so now that blame is going to, you talked about it in the identify section, how that trauma will color the lenses, and everything you see will come from that trauma. And so I really knew that especially in writing the energy harvest, that we needed to forgive as soon as possible so that we can open our minds and be available for the new energy that can come in. Because forgiveness has such a way of shutting us off, not only from the person that harmed us, not only from those bad feelings that we have endured, but we can't decide to shut ourselves off and then flip a switch and cut ourselves on and then turn ourselves back off again. If it's shut down across the board. If it's open, then it's open. You know what I'm saying? You have the potential across the board. And so, how important was forgiving for you, and how were you able to accomplish the forgiveness?
You know what? It came from the point of view that um, everything that I had been through, or anybody that I had interacted with, that they were acting, first of all, from their own traumas. Okay.
Mm,
First, you have to recognize you're not the only one going through stuff. Other people are going through it at their own stuff at the same time. And you talk about forgiveness for oneself, forgiveness for staying in that relationship too long, or forgiveness for allowing somebody to do this to you, or you even doing it to yourself. But there's also forgiveness for those other people who you originally perceived as doing something to you. Okay. And people become very, stubborn or very rooted in the I'm never going to forgive that person. You don't forgive somebody else for their sake. You forgive them for your sake and for your growth and for your release. And by going through, you know, certain forgivenesses, whether you use affirmations like Ho'oponopono or something like that, that you're clearing yourself out. That other person is still going to carry what they're carrying, unless they're doing their own work. But you're releasing the resentment and the anger and the tears that were caused by the trauma you experienced when you interacted with those people, even with your own parents. I've had this conversation with my mom and dad already and laid it out for them. I said, listen, as a kid, this is what I experienced, and this is what colored a lot of things in my life, and said, this was not your fault. This is all on me. You did the best that you could with the tools you were given, and I now have to take it from there, and I have to clear this out myself.
wow, that is so powerful, because a lot of people don't understand the healing process, and that it is over time, not overnight. We have layers. We peel back the layers, and some of those layers are real thin. You know what I'm saying? While some of those layers are thick, and we can see more of an improvement in certain areas than other areas. And so the hurtful part is when people outside of our network, mainly family members, friends, relationships that we've had, don't understand our process and expect us to be better overnight. They don't expect us to ever have to deal with this trauma again, but for us, we know that it's ongoing, and we always have to be willing to take another look at the trauma so that we can have another layer of healing, right? This is such an amazing conversation. I am so enjoying talking to you, Rob. You have really brought some perspective and insight, especially from an evolved perspective. A man who has had the courage to look into his life to see where you may have gone wrong, to see what needs to change. A man that has looked into his life and gave himself permission to feel all your feelings, not just the ones that feel good. That is incredible. And I thank you so much for sharing this with the people. There's a man on here that's watching this segment today who is identifying with your story, who is identifying with the courage that is needed in order to heal your life and to create a new life after trauma. So thank you again. All right, guys, this is Robert Arana. We'll call him Robert Arana, but as a friend, we call him Rob. So we've talked about the identify section. We've talked about the set section. And now of this 4-phase healing process, we're going to move into the achieve section of the workbook. Now, if you haven't gotten your workbook yet, I want to let you know that it is available on Amazon. You can also go to my website, which is www.spiritsourceconnection.com, and get your copy there. Okay, back to the healing train. And we're talking about the achieve session. Once you've identified the trauma and now you've gone through some process to help you heal, now you can start achieving things. And you spoke about this or alluded to this a little bit in the last section, where there used to be situations that would baffle us. There used to be situations that would stop us dead in our tracks. Those triggers that happen that we have no way of knowing when we're going to be triggered, but how will you respond when you are? Ooh, that was powerful what you said. You know, being able to make it through the trigger to the other side. And so as you achieve success, you're able to pat yourself on the back and say, you know what? You didn't stay in that feeling of depression as long as you did last time. You know what? Your self-esteem is improving. And it's so important to celebrate the small wins. We don't have to wait until the end to celebrate. There's something about the celebration that brings in new energy, that gives us that momentum to move forward to the next thing that we can achieve. And at the same time, we give ourselves that warm, loving hug of approval that we've always needed from someone else. You see? And you were talking about that. And so this is where we are now, the achieve section. And so being able to achieve looks different from everyone's trauma journey. We're not always going to achieve the same things in the same way. And so what I want to know now is, now that you have been able to identify the trauma, find ways to heal, how or what things have you achieved as a result of the process?
Well, I definitely feel, lack of a better word, more complete. More able to connect with other people on an emotional and spiritual level with them. The other achievements definitely came through my intuitive gifts, because once I cleared out those traumas, you know, I've always been intuitive. I, spent over 20 years collecting data on myself. That's process, to prove that I could do it. And then once you start clearing this stuff out, more and more gifts started coming in. They started just expanding exponentially, and being able to tap into what the universe has available to us, has available to every person that's listening to this right now. And I decided that now I'm going to grab that brass ring. And if I want to do something, or there's a certain modality or something that I want to bring in, it's there for my taking now. There's nothing that's restricting me from getting what I want from my personal self at this point. And that's something that transcends, money or stuff or something like that, because that's passing, that comes and goes. Whereas what I've achieved, on a spiritual level, is something that's going to carry me through the rest of this lifetime and hopefully into my next. So.
Yeah, that is so awesome. When I think about achieving success, it could be I was able to go to the mall and not be hypervigilant. I was able to eat a balanced meal today and not go over my goal. I was able to achieve because first I had to visualize, what kind of person do you want to be, B? What kind of person? How do you want to feel? What kind of life do you want? And so for the first time, I was able to actually visualize and imagine myself healed. I was able to talk to the creator through, spirit guide, spirit, however you want to talk about that. These are all 3 different components, as you already know. But I was able to speak to my spiritual team and say, this is the kind of person I would like to be. And these are the kinds of things that I would like to achieve. And oh yeah, I want to be a TED talker. That's my goal one day, to be on a TED talk. You know what I'm saying? But there was a time in my life where I could not have even imagined these things for myself. Because number one, I didn't have the encouragement in my household or around me. I had it at school, obviously, right? But being able to achieve success comes in so many different forms. You were able to run that mile in less than 15 minutes. You were able to write that book. You were able to, clear out all that garbage. That's an achievement as well. And I really liked what you were saying about how once you were able to achieve that clean house, if you will, as if you were the house, after you cleaned all of that negative energy and all those faulty belief systems and all those lies that were holding you down and all that trauma that had you bound, once you were able to get all of that out, guess what? New gifts started appearing in your life. You were able to see that, wow, there is something so much more underneath that trauma that you didn't even realize was there. I'm so happy to hear you say that you and I are not the only ones that have these gifts. We all have them. It's just a matter of being able to go in there, find them, not necessarily find them, but go in there and do the work, because the gifts will be added to you at its appropriate time, right? And so that's letting everyone know out there, if you want to operate in your innate spiritual gifts, you must first heal the trauma that has your eyes blinded. You must first, release the resentment so that you can be filled with good energy. Because of course, nothing is good is going to come from bad energy. You know what I'm saying? And so really, really happy to hear about the achievement, and it energizes me to talk about the achievements too, because I didn't know all this was in store for me. It was just one step at a time. Do this, get good at it. Do the next thing, get good at it. And before you know it, I was just like amazed, like, oh my God, are you kidding me? This is my life now just because I did a few things. And now I get to help other people achieve these kinds of successes in their life as well. And so this moves us on to the sustain portion, Rob, because even after you've identified the trauma, you've got some new energy in, you're doing visualizations, you're meditating, you're doing the yoga, you're doing the spirit work, you're doing all the shadow work. Even after all of that, you got a new mindset. Oh my God, you're achieving wonderful things. How do you sustain it? How do you keep your vibration high enough to walk through the day and respond instead of reacting? How do you sustain that, Rob?
For me, it's putting myself first in all aspects of my life.
Okay.
That doesn't mean you're a selfish person. It just means you mean the most to yourself. So it's through things like a lot of self-care, whether it's going for a float, or even self-care for me is sitting in a group of people and discussing things like this, because part of that self-care is also relating some of my story or things that I've gone through, because now I'm helping somebody else who no longer feels that they're alone in what they're dealing with. So it's also to sustain it is surrounding yourself with the right people. Through this entire process, I've lost some friendships, people that I really were close to, but they no longer are on my vibrational level or where I am right now. Still love them. I just can't be around them anymore, because they were part of my coping mechanisms, because you surround yourself with people sometimes who commiserate with you. you know you're like, oh, this happened, and they're like, oh yeah, exactly. So you start just to get into that energy of the complaints and just bitching and stuff like that. Well, part of the sustain is coming out of that and surrounding yourself not with people who are going to tell you what you want to hear. You really never want that. But people who understand what you've gone through, have done all their own work also, and understand when you talk about these things, so you don't feel like the weirdo in the room anymore. So that's part of the self-love. That's part of the sustaining portion of it. So whatever brings you some kind of joy is going to help you sustain that, whether it's doing yoga or meditation, or it's just riding your bike or standing outside in the sunshine, doing some gardening, whatever brings you joy. And if playing, Xbox brings you joy, then go ahead and do it. Okay. As long everything in moderation, even self-care in moderation has to be done. I don't think that I can spend every single day, getting a massage or getting energy work done to me. After a time, it's like, oh, I need to pause this. Okay. I need it when I need that recharge, or I need a little bit of a reset, and reminding myself, I do matter to me.
Wow, that is wonderful. Thank you so much. You gave such great ideas for self-care in there. The floating, the journaling, journaling, the gardening, the going for a walk, all of those things. And like you said, anything that brings you joy is going to help sustain all of the work that you have done in the process. Rob, I could talk to you all day and learn more and more about you every moment. But we're going to have to close it down, unfortunately. We only have a short time here to bring this message to the community, but we have done such an awesome job today. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Healing Train. I could not do this without you today. And before we leave, is there any kind of tags, any kind of words you want as far as how people can reach you, your email address, anything you want to give before we go?
Sure. You can always reach me at my email address, which is the name of my business, Healing Heart Energy Therapy, all one word, at gmail.com. If you want to get in touch with me, I have a Facebook page at the same time. I also have a website, the same exact as my email address, except it's .com. If somebody wants to get in touch with me, and whether it's for a session or just to talk to me a little bit about my experience, and then what I can help them work through, and help point them in the right direction. I may not be the be all and end all for helping somebody, but I might know somebody who can help you. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. Well, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for joining us again for another wonderful, riveting, exciting episode of the Healing Train. And so you're going to be looking for Rob to come on soon. And so listen, when you watch the Healing Train, watch it with an open mind. Watch it so that you can look at the similarities and not the differences. And if you do that, you will be helped by Rob's message today. If you take an opportunity to just listen with an open mind and an open heart and an open spirit, you will be blessed by today's session. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time on another episode of The Healing Train.
bye.
Bye.